Before we begin, the name is placed on the top right side of the screen. The grand hall glows under golden candlelight, the air thick with the scent of roasted meats and aged wine. Nobles move in careful synchrony, exchanging pleasantries with smiles that hold more calculation than warmth. Viscount Milji stands tall, his posture rigid with authority, exuding the effortless poise of a man who has spent years perfecting the art of noble gatherings. He watches over his daughter, Elena, with sharp, scrutinizing eyes, reminding her yet again of the evening's significance. Her fiancé, Hans, is in attendance and everything. Her appearance, her behavior, must be flawless. Elena nods, though her expression betrays a deep longing to be anywhere else. Perhaps home, curled up in bed, this girl wants to scroll reels. Milji's gaze shifts, zeroing in on a particular family across the hall, the Leightons. Duke Leighton stands at the center of the attention, but beside him is a woman far more interesting. The former Duchess of Leighton, Wilhelmina. The subject of countless rumors, she is a young woman from a fallen noble house, sold off into marriage to secure a future. Her husband, the former duke, had conveniently died almost immediately after their wedding, leaving her not just a widow but an enigma. Milji greets the duke with the effortless elegance of a seasoned nobleman, his voice steady and firm. He expects Elena to do the same, but before his daughter can even attempt a curtsy, she suddenly sways. A wave of nausea washes over her, and it takes everything in her to remain upright. The realization crashes down. She has starved herself for 2 days just to stand out at this banquet, and now her body is staging a full-scale rebellion. Milji, horrified by her sudden wavering, snaps at her to compose herself, his voice carrying the quiet menace of a man who refuses to tolerate public embarrassment. But before the situation can escalate further, Wilhelmina moves. In a swift, fluid motion, she drapes a warm cloak over Elena's shoulders, her expression shifting from distant amusement to genuine concern. The weight of Wilhelmina's hand on her shoulder is steady, her eyes sharp with worry. How could someone this weak even stand in the cold, let alone survive the suffocating constraints of a corset and heels? It is baffling. It is infuriating. The sight of Elena, practically reduced to skin and bones, unsettles Wilhelmina in a way she does not expect. Elena, caught off guard, is jolted back to a memory, her grandmother. The warmth of the gesture, the quiet concern, the sense of familiarity in the way Wilhelmina regards her, it is something she has not felt in a long time. Wilhelmina, meanwhile, finds herself drowning in her own recollections. The sight of Elena, weak and struggling, is too familiar. It reminds her of herself. Before marriage she had been nothing more than a desperate young woman, clawing her way through life, scraping together whatever money she could just to survive. Debt-ridden, exhausted, always one misstep away from ruin, hunger had been a constant companion. That life had ended the day a man arrived at her door, stating that he would take her away. Just like that, her last name had become Leighton. It was a powerful name, belonging to the most influential noble house in the West, but it meant little when the man she had been promised to had already buried 4 wives before her. Holy cow, this man is a 100% misogynist sitting in the carriage on her way to the estate. She had braced herself for the worst. Surely, a man with such a history could only be the embodiment of misery, if not outright danger. Running away was not an option, but she had prepared herself for a life of endurance. Then, upon arriving at the estate, she received news that would change everything. The Duke was dead. A heart attack, they said. He had died just the day before. There had been no wedding ceremony, yet she was still expected to attend the funeral as his widow. It was a strange introduction to married life, if one could even call it that. With the duchy thrown into chaos, no one had time to acknowledge the new bride, widow, whatever title fit best. Without any formal welcome or introduction to the estate, she had been swiftly cast away to a secluded residence. 2 months have passed since then. Wilhelmina finds unexpected solace in her quiet isolation. She confides in Anna, a servant who has become something of a companion, that she prefers it this way. The grandeur of the estate holds no real appeal to her. After years of being crushed under the weight of debt, this secluded life feels like a luxury. Anna, deeply moved by Wilhelmina's resilience, often expresses concern over her standing within the household. With the former duke gone and the new duke preoccupied with securing his position, there is little certainty regarding Wilhelmina's future. The year-end banquet is approaching, bringing with it the arrival of an important guest from the imperial family, which only heightens the unpredictability of the situation. Wilhelmina, however, is less concerned with noble politics and more focused on practicality. She knows that once things settle, she will likely be cast out. No sane noble family would entrust real power to a woman with no connections or influence. If that happens, she figures she will head to the capital, start a business, or perhaps even travel. The idea of securing some form of financial power before her inevitable dismissal lingers at the back of her mind. Her thoughts are interrupted by a sudden knock at the door. The butler enters, his demeanor carefully neutral as he informs her that Her Grace has requested an audience. Wilhelmina, caught off guard by the phrasing, immediately recognizes that Her Grace refers to the current Duchess of Leighton, Helene Leighton. The request is unusual, and as the butler escorts her down the long corridors of the estate, he adds, with careful words, that the meeting concerns her future residence. He then, with an air of hesitance, advises her to prepare her luggage. Wilhelmina stiffens at the implication. The request to mind her luggage feels like a warning. Perhaps this is it. Perhaps the family has finally decided to send her away. The situation is complicated, but Wilhelmina still holds a higher social standing than Helene, simply by virtue of hierarchy. As the widow of the former duke, she technically ranks above the new duchess, yet Helene has still chosen to acknowledge her status with respect rather than hostility. It is impressive, really. Despite being younger than her own stepson, Helene embodies the perfect noblewoman, graceful, composed, and deeply committed to upholding the dignity of the family name. As Wilhelmina steps into the grand chamber, she can't help but wonder, does Helene value manners more than pride? Then, as if to answer her silent question, Helene turns to her with the utmost dignity, greets her with the warmth of a seasoned noblewoman, and without hesitation calls her mother. Helene's sudden intrusion makes Wilhelmina wonder if she is not making her uncomfortable. It feels strange to her. Wilhelmina notes aloud that this is their first time meeting, prompting Helene to apologize for contacting her so late. She then gestures for Wilhelmina to take a seat and orders the maid to bring some tea. Helene, a member of the royal family and the esteemed lady of the Duchy of Leighton, possesses all the grace and refinement expected of a noblewoman. She stands out even among the aristocracy, renowned as the star of high society, a role model for noble daughters. With poised elegance, Helene asks Wilhelmina if she has been well. Wilhelmina responds that she has and inquires about Helene in return. As always, Helene replies she has been busy. Wilhelmina ponders the meaning behind Helene's words. Is she subtly implying that she was too occupied to call her sooner? She decides not to take it personally. Then, with a calm yet deliberate tone, Helene states that there is something important to discuss. Wilhelmina, unable to immediately grasp the meaning, hesitantly asks for clarification. Helene then explains they would like Wilhelmina to officially accept a position as a member of the Leighton Duchy. The statement shocks Wilhelmina so much that she momentarily fails to mask her emotions. For a moment, she had braced herself for the opposite, for them to cast her out entirely. Instead, Helene continues, stating that as an official member of the family, they expect her to attend both the year-end and New Year's banquets alongside them. Wilhelmina has never set foot in high society, but even she understands the significance of the Leighton Duchy's year-end banquet. If she were to appear at such an event, regardless of the duchy's influence, the nobility would undoubtedly talk. She recalls something Anna had mentioned. An important royal figure would be attending this year's banquet. If even the duchy considers them a distinguished guest, they must hold an exceptionally high status. A bitter thought crosses Wilhelmina's mind. Have they lost their minds? As much as she loathes admitting it, she knows that she is a disgrace to the Leighton Duchy. Are they extending this offer out of pity, charity? The title of mother-in-law, a position tied to the Leighton family, holds immense power, and she knows they would not grant it to just anyone out of kindness. Then, a sudden realization strikes her. What if the duchy was not the only one involved in making this decision? She recalls something the butler once told her. Helene is unwavering when it comes to hierarchy and tradition. No matter how cold and composed she may appear, Helene values the established order above her personal pride. Could Wilhelmina, then, truly outrank her? It seems impossible. The Leighton family is one of only 2 ducal houses in the empire. The only figure with the authority to pressure them would be the emperor himself. The weight of this thought settles over Wilhelmina, and when she voices it, she can see the slight shift in Helene's expression. It is all but confirmed. This decision was not entirely the duchy's own. The emperor was involved. As Wilhelmina studies Helene's reaction, the pieces begin to fall into place. She recalls that a new emperor ascended the throne just last year, one known to favor the Eastern faction, which played a crucial role in securing his claim. In contrast, the Leighton Duchy leads the Western nobility. The previous emperor's first empress bore the first prince in Helene before passing away, while the current emperor is the son of the second empress. After defeating the first prince, he seized the throne. To him, the Leighton family and Helene, his half-blooded sister, must seem like potential threats. However, the Leighton family wields immense wealth and controls vast territory, their influence deeply rooted in high society. A newly crowned emperor, no matter how ambitious, cannot move against them easily. Tarnishing their reputation or making overt political maneuvers would be difficult unless the previous Duke of Leighton had not suddenly died. Wilhelmina's thoughts race. The death of the former Duke left a vacuum of power, and judging from Helene's response, it is evident that the Emperor has used this opportunity to exert pressure on the family. Now everything starts making sense. The previous Duke was a violent man, one who had murdered 4 of his wives. Yet the Leighton Duchy, the very same family that had brought in a 5th wife, is now attempting to cast her aside. Such blatant hypocrisy and moral corruption would not escape notice. The Emperor, as the ruler overseeing the nobility, now has the perfect justification to intervene. After all, no one but the Emperor himself would have had the audacity to force a fallen noblewoman into the duchy, much less as the previous Duke's widow. In the end, the Leighton Duchy has chosen the safest option. Rather than provoking the Emperor by discarding Wilhelmina, they have decided it is more prudent to keep her close, under their sole control. Even if the Emperor had not directly ordered them to do so, they may have panicked and made this decision on their own. Regardless of the specifics, one thing is clear. This is a testament to how acutely aware they are of the Empire's political landscape. Instead of ensuring her removal, they are now making sure she does not flee. And to Wilhelmina, this entire situation is nothing short of fascinating. She cannot help but think she is actually enjoying this. Wilhelmina believes that what is happening is nothing more than political stirrings. She voices her thoughts aloud, stating that life in the annex is rather good for her and that she does not anticipate any issues moving forward. Since Helene has personally requested her attendance at the banquet, she agrees. However, she lacks many things, and so she turns to Helene for assistance. In reality, Wilhelmina possesses neither a dress nor jewelry. Even someone as unfamiliar with banquets as she is understands that sleepwear is out of the question. She requires Helene's help in acquiring appropriate attire. Helene, grasping the request, inquires whether Wilhelmina needs anything else. Wilhelmina, having heard of the brutal winters in the western region, wishes to prepare accordingly. Helene promptly orders a maid to summon a tailor, but before the command is fully issued, Wilhelmina interjects. The clothing is not for her, she clarifies, but for the children working in the annex. She estimates that nearly 30 outfits are necessary, believing that the servants' clothing is far too thin for the harsh climate. She even wonders whose idea it was to provide such inadequate garments. Anna, one of the servants, frequently visits Wilhelmina's room, always muttering about how cold it is. Helene, somewhat taken aback, asks if Wilhelmina is certain about this request. Wilhelmina, unwavering, confirms her decision without hesitation. Helene is momentarily speechless. Now that Wilhelmina has gained a deeper understanding of how things function in this household, she wonders if Helene had expected her to ask for jewels instead. But Wilhelmina knows that greed leads to ruin. Even if circumstances have shifted in her favor, she remains an outsider with no true ties to the duchy. Overstepping could reduce her to nothing more than a powerless figurehead. Accept whatever kindness the duchy extends, but never take more than necessary. This is the slogan she resolves to follow. Rising from her seat, Wilhelmina prepares to leave. She has a morning appointment, and it is almost time for the little ones to return from the laundry. This world may possess magic, yet no one has invented a washing machine with hot water. As she steps away, she suddenly turns back to Helene and remarks that she is a great daughter-in-law. Helene flinches at the statement, immediately questioning what Wilhelmina means by it. Wilhelmina assures her that these are not empty words, but a genuine compliment. She can see how exhausting it must be to address someone as mother when that title belongs to a person one despises. Only now does she truly understand how strong the lady of this house must be, wearing a mask for the sake of the family while yearning to be left alone. Helene finds herself contemplating Wilhelmina's words. Is she truly just a kind-hearted woman? Dismissing the notion, Helene convinces herself that it cannot be so. Even if Wilhelmina is not actively trying to conceal it, in the brief conversation they have shared, she has already managed to grasp both Leighton's situation and the political landscape surrounding them. Her status may be low, but her ability to assess the situation is undeniable. It leads Helene to wonder, did Wilhelmina major in political science at the academy? Someone so politically perceptive cannot possibly be purely good. It could all be an act. Helene contemplates whether she should consult the butler. He is a close aide brought from the imperial palace, a man who remains unaffected by the empire's shifting tides. However, he is also too kind and fair-minded, not the sort of person useful in handling such situations. Remembering her upcoming meeting with the children, Helene glances at the time. Less than 30 minutes remain, and she has already spent too long pondering Wilhelmina's words. The meeting was scheduled to last an hour, but she will now have to cut it short. As she glances outside, she notices the children wandering about. A frown crosses her face. Why are they outside? She will need to instruct the nanny to enforce a stricter schedule. Drawing the curtains shut, she scoffs, but Wilhelmina's compliment continues to linger in her mind. What had led her to make such a judgment? Wilhelmina's gaze unsettles her. She appears younger than Helene, and yet something about her demeanor suggests otherwise. There is an unsettling sense that Wilhelmina understands far more than she should, as if she can see right through her. Helene does not like this. Not one bit. Wilhelmina's past life unfolds before her eyes. She had once been a teacher, standing in front of eager students who hung onto her every word. One particularly enthusiastic student had gone on a long 30-minute explanation about the differences between regression, transmigration, and reincarnation. At the time, it had felt like nothing more than an overly passionate ramble about common tropes in novels. But now, as she exists in a new world, that knowledge proves unexpectedly useful. Regression, she recalls, means returning to a certain point in one's life while retaining memories of the future. Transmigration involves entering another's body, inheriting both their life and their memories. And reincarnation means being born anew, a fresh life with only the subconscious echoes of the past. Hannah had been reborn as Wilhelmina, carrying over the wisdom of her previous existence. But even that wasn't enough. If only she had been a world history teacher instead of just a regular educator, she might have understood more about human rights, labor conditions, and cultural structures. Even so, she has been able to change the annex schedule as she pleases, granting herself some degree of control over the situation. As she surveys the children, she takes in their small, frail figures. The eldest among them is no more than 10 years old, yet they toil away to earn their keep. It is said that noble families treat their servants more leniently, particularly those under the knights, but these children are stuck in the cycle of labor without any such privileges. Leighton's treatment of his servants is considered relatively good, but that only makes her wonder just how harsh it must be elsewhere. Yet even if she wishes to help, she knows she cannot simply force the duchy to stop employing child labor. Taking away their work means taking away their place in society. It is a larger societal issue, not just a matter of cruel employers. One of the children looks up at her with wary eyes, examining her expression closely. Wilhelmina's face, naturally stern, often gives off an air of coldness. The little girl seems unsettled, as if debating whether to say something. Wilhelmina wonders if her face truly appears that frightening. Brushing the thought aside, she asks if the girl has finished her potatoes and if she would like more. The child shakes her head, saying she is fine. But her expression shifts. There is something she wants to ask. Wilhelmina immediately understands, recognizing the hesitancy in the girl's demeanor. The child remembers sitting on Wilhelmina's lap before, but she hesitates to ask if she can do so again. Before the little girl can struggle with the question any longer, Wilhelmina calls out to her, asking if she wants to sit in her lap. The child's face lights up with a beaming smile as she nods eagerly. Wilhelmina welcomes her without hesitation. As she settles into Wilhelmina's embrace, the girl glances up and asks, with an almost relieved tone, if she is going to live here now. Wilhelmina confirms it, and the child visibly relaxes. These children must have thought she would leave the annex eventually. There is surely plenty of talk about her behind her back. Perhaps she should thank the emperor, she muses, if not out of genuine gratitude, then at least for securing her place here. Curious, Wilhelmina asks the little girl what work she has for the day. The child brightens and eagerly explains that today they are pulling weeds. The weeds that grow in autumn are particularly strong, requiring extra effort to remove. She adds, almost proudly, that there is someone who excels at the task, John. The name does not ring any bells. Wilhelmina frowns slightly, certain that she has memorized all the servants' names. Has she somehow overlooked someone? The little girl explains that John is an errand boy, working on daily wages. The gardener had hired him in spring and summer when work was plentiful, but now, as winter approaches, there is less demand, which is troubling for him. The children had even suggested that John work alongside them, but he had refused outright. Wilhelmina wonders why. The girl's face turns serious as she explains, John is afraid of nobles. He fears being whipped for making mistakes, just as he has seen others suffer under his previous masters. The other children have tried to convince him that Wilhelmina is different, but John's past experiences have left him deeply distrustful. Errand boys have little work in the winter. If not for today's wheat pulling, John would have had no way to earn money. Worse yet, he has no parents to rely on. Wilhelmina's thoughts grow heavier. She asks if John lives alone. The girl shakes her head. John has a younger sister, too young to work. He is the only one who earns for them both. Lately, they have had no food. The children whisper about how John and his sister have even resorted to eating tree bark porridge. Wilhelmina glances at the other children, asking if they are friends with John. They all nod eagerly, confirming that John is hardworking, kind, and always helps them even when it's not his responsibility. He seems to be well liked among them. She asks again, does John truly work as hard as they say? The children all nod with certainty. Wilhelmina makes a decision. She happens to need an errand boy for tasks outside the annex. If John is as diligent as they claim, she will meet him herself. On the other side of the estate, John pulls weeds with all his strength. His thin arms tremble slightly from the effort, but he does not stop. Sweat drips down his brow as he stands to catch his breath. He does not trust nobles. His fists clench as old memories surface. Being beaten for leaving behind a single weed, being treated as less than human. Servants are treated like dogs. He knows that if he became a servant, it would improve his situation, but at what cost? If he were to die in the service of some noble, his sister Lily would be left alone. No matter how generous or important this money might be, nothing is more valuable than his life. Yet for now, at least he has work. Taking a deep breath, he returns to the weeds, determined to make the most of the opportunity. But suddenly, he senses a presence. His hands freeze, his eyes lift. Standing before him is Wilhelmina, whom he does not recognize. John thinks that it is not even the middle of winter yet, but Wilhelmina is already wrapped in that big cloak instead of a blanket. He focuses on his task, needing to pull the weeds, and of all places, they are growing exactly where Wilhelmina is sitting. Judging by her appearance, she does not seem like a noble to him. There is no attendant by her side, and something about her feels different. He asks her to move aside so he can clear the weeds, and she quickly apologizes for getting in his way. As he begins pulling them out, his thoughts linger on her presence. She truly does not seem like a noble, yet there is something about her that stands out. His thoughts are interrupted when Wilhelmina suddenly calls out to him, making him flinch. She tells him that she has heard about him from Mermaid, who spoke of his skill in weeding. John humbly responds, rushing off the compliment, but Wilhelmina continues, adding that Mermaid also spoke highly of his intelligence and how he is a great brother. The praise makes him slightly embarrassed, as he is not used to being complimented in such a direct way. Wilhelmina then sits beside him, and John becomes aware of her scent. It is not the overpowering, powdery perfume that noblewomen often wear. Instead, it is a soft, sweet fragrance, like butterflies and herbs, something he has smelled before but cannot quite place. Wilhelmina then asks if he likes potatoes. Without waiting for a response, she takes out some, explaining that while they are not spring potatoes, they still taste delicious. Suddenly, recognition hits him. That scent, he remembers it now. It is the smell of brewing herbs, the aroma of freshly baked bread. It is the comforting scent of home, of a time when his mother and grandmother were still alive. Wilhelmina, still speaking, tells him that if peeling the potatoes is difficult for him, she can help. She also mentions that she has brought cinnamon tea to drink alongside the meal. After a while, as their time together comes to an end, Wilhelmina prepares to leave. She reflects on how pleasant the conversation with John was, though she notices his cautious nature. She had hoped to get closer to him, but he remains somewhat distant. Failing to win him over completely feels like a small defeat, especially for someone in her position as an academy instructor. However, when John asks if he will see her again, there is a flicker of something in his tone. She reassures him with a smile, promising that she will return every Wednesday morning with roasted potatoes. To this, John smiles, and she takes it as a small victory. But Wilhelmina does not know much about what happens outside the castle, particularly in Leighton territory. She realizes that hiring John could be beneficial. He could provide insight into the land she now governs. Now that she is the Duchess of Leighton, it is only right that she understands her people, and in return she can offer John some decent work. The thought of meeting him again next week is something she finds herself looking forward to. Her thoughts are interrupted when she notices the butler approaching. It catches her attention. Why would the head butler of the estate come to the annex? The butler greets her, and she immediately asks why he is here. He delivers a message on behalf of Helene. Wilhelmina sighs, thinking that it seems Helene is quite busy. The butler, ever formal, asks her to forgive Helene with her generosity. But Wilhelmina cannot help but wonder, does this really count as generosity? It is clear to her that Helene has no real intention of getting close to her. Even though her words are polite, her actions speak otherwise. Still, she listens as the butler explains the reason for his visit. In a week's time, there will be a small banquet, a celebration to honor the Margrave's achievements. Since Helene has been summoned to the imperial palace, she will not be able to attend. Wilhelmina immediately understands where this is going. She finishes the butler's sentence for him, stating that they want her to take Helene's place at the banquet. The butler confirms her assumption, explaining that Helene wants her to become familiar with the Western social circle. Wilhelmina notes how they are making it sound like an opportunity rather than a substitution. Regardless, attending such gatherings will help her adjust to her new position. She accepts the proposal, though she knows she does not truly have a choice. They may call it a recommendation, but declining would have consequences. At the very least, as a mere stand-in, she doubts there will be much for her to do. The butler thanks her and informs her that he will arrange for a tailor and a knowledgeable lady to assist her. This piques her curiosity. What exactly does he mean by that? He clarifies that since this is her first time attending a Western social event, it is only natural that she needs to learn the rules. The implication is clear. They do not see her as a proper noblewoman, and it seems they believe she needs training. Wilhelmina is aware that she lacks knowledge of noble customs, so she does not object to learning. However, she sets one condition. She tells the butler to have them come in the afternoon. This surprises him, and he asks why. Her answer is simple. She is sleepy in the morning. Studying first thing in the morning was a habit she followed back in Korea, and she has had enough of it. The scene shifts to an old lady stepping out of the carriage. She is Thai wife of Viscount Roland Thome, most renowned tutor, who has trained countless ladies of the West. It has started her first official event as the Duchess. Viscount Roland, the esteemed author of Modern Etiquette for Noblewomen and a celebrated etiquette instructor, approaches her role with the same precision and discipline that once governed her life as a noblewoman. After the passing of her husband, she chooses not to remarry or continue the family line, but instead dedicates herself to training young noblewomen in the art of grace and decorum. Many have learned under her tutelage, and Wilhelmina is no exception. However, the training is rigorous, spanning 3 days of relentless refinement, where every gesture, posture, and mannerism is scrutinized and perfected. During the session, Roland watches Wilhelmina with a keen eye, correcting her stance with unwavering authority. She instructs her to ensure that her head does not follow her gaze, that her chin remains tucked while keeping the top straight, and that she straightens her chest and shoulders, extending her waist as though her solar plexus is drawing away from her navel. The lesson then shifts to dining etiquette, where Roland demonstrates the correct way to hold the soup plate in her left hand, to scoop from the front, and to bring the soup to her lips without making a sound. If the soup level gets too low, she must delicately lift the plate rather than scrape at the remnants. Moving on to the main course, Roland reminds her that food should always be cut into bite-sized pieces. Should a toast be raised during a banquet, Wilhelmina is instructed to lift her glass to eye level in the direction of the host before partaking. The training is both physically and mentally exhausting. Later that night, as Wilhelmina lies in bed, she reflects on the day's lessons. Becoming the Duchess is proving to be an arduous task, one she had anticipated, yet experiencing it firsthand is another matter entirely. Even so, she finds a small comfort in the fact that Roland's sharp remarks have been fewer than before. This gives her hope that, by tomorrow, she will perform even better, perhaps even flawlessly. With that thought, she drifts into sleep. The following morning, during tea, Roland acknowledges Wilhelmina's progress. She praises the young noblewoman's ability to maintain her composure and remain unfazed by minor errors, calling it an admirable trait. Wilhelmina receives the compliment with humility, attributing her progress to Roland's exceptional guidance. Though Roland acknowledges that there are still areas for improvement, she reassures Wilhelmina that since the Duchess is not required to dance at the upcoming celebration, it will not pose an issue. Wilhelmina, who does not have a dance partner, finds this arrangement convenient. All that remains is for her to greet guests, sit at the table, and pass the time through the meal. As Roland continues speaking, she suddenly begins to cough, her complexion noticeably pale. Wilhelmina quickly takes note of this, recognizing signs of fatigue that she had previously overlooked. Without hesitation, she suggests postponing the lesson, to which Roland, though reluctant, eventually agrees. Assisting her to a chair, Wilhelmina disappears momentarily before returning with a round cloth in her hands. She hands it to Roland, prompting a curious inquiry as to its purpose. Wilhelmina explains, without embellishment, that a heated stone is wrapped inside the fabric. If it becomes too hot, Roland can switch it between her hands or wrap it in another handkerchief. Roland, still puzzled, questions why Wilhelmina has given this to her. Without speaking, Wilhelmina simply places the warm stone in her instructor's hands. She has noticed, even during lessons, that Roland frequently removes her gloves and rubs her fingers, an unconscious habit of someone suffering from the cold. While others might have ignored such details, Wilhelmina, ever observant, does not. She could have simply advised Roland to remove her gloves, but etiquette is as deeply ingrained in her as discipline is in Roland. Roland accepts the unexpected gesture and, upon realizing its warmth, acknowledges its effectiveness. She finds it to be a rather unique hand warmer, unlike any she has used before. Wilhelmina then remarks that the stone was found by the attendants, and she merely wrapped it in cloth. Roland, inspecting the fabric, inquires whether Wilhelmina had purchased it. However, Wilhelmina calmly replies that she made it herself. At this, Roland's curiosity deepens. Wilhelmina did not create it for herself, but for the attendants. The explanation follows naturally. During her time at an academy for elementary students, Wilhelmina had managed everything on her own. Sewing was among the many skills she picked up, whether it was mending torn clothing or embroidering children's names onto their indoor shoes. She recalls how, when her autumn comes, the children would often complain about their hands aching from washing clothes in the cold. To ease their discomfort, she had made similar hand warmers, though what started as a simple task soon turned into producing 20 of them. Roland, though initially taken aback, cannot help but be impressed. Wilhelmina, however, remains oblivious to why this is remarkable. Surely these are skills anyone can learn. Roland, however, knows otherwise. Embroidery is considered a refined and delicate craft, yet few noblewomen would think to use it for the benefit of their attendants. As their conversation continues, Roland notices that the tea before her is a blend of ginger and lemon. She questions whether Wilhelmina requested it specifically. Wilhelmina, in response, urges her instructor to drink it before it gets cold. Ginger is an expensive herbal ingredient, but she has a keen eye for details. She points out that Roland does not merely dislike the cold, she is from the western region, where autumn feels like the onset of winter. From the layers of clothing Roland wears, it is evident how much she struggles with the climate here. Wilhelmina, eager to relate, shares her own difficulties. She, too, detests the cold. Poor circulation and sensitivity to cold are miserable afflictions, one she understands well. While she cannot claim to comprehend the pain of losing a husband, she can at least share in the battle against the bitter chill. Roland listens intently, then smiles, lifting the cup to take a sip of her tea. The warmth soothes her throat, and for the first time in 3 days, she allows herself a moment of reprieve. With a measured breath, she finally speaks again. Now that the 3-day training has concluded, it is time for her to give her final assessment of Wilhelmina's progress.